Greetings, friends, and welcome to our very first edition of Voices and Village. My name is Raymond Tyler, and the Lord has led me to, before we even get started with explaining what the show is and what we're about, the Lord has led me to start with prayer and scripture. So let us now look to the Lord in prayer. Dear Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the many blessings that you've given us. We thank you for the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus Christ. Because of his sacrifice, we may come boldly before the throne of grace. Lord, I ask this one simple prayer. Be with me and lead me as I seek to lead your people to have a better family life and a better spiritual life through this program we call Voices in Village. Our scripture lesson today comes from Genesis 1, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. I prefer the King James Version of the Bible, but we invite you to read along and to follow along in whatever translation you like best. And once again, we're going to the first book of the Bible, the first chapter in the Bible, Genesis 1, verses 1 through 5. And the Bible says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. May the Lord add a rich blessing to the hearing and the understanding of his holy word."
Hungry? Let's eat. Indulge in our big, sexy, plant-based burger. Made with 100% vegan ingredients, right down to the cheese. Our yummy black bean burger is made here in our kitchen, not in a lab. Alkalicious Juice Bar and Vegan Grill, located in the Greenbrier area of Chesapeake for dine-in or pickup.
And welcome back to Voices and Village. And as promised, we are here in Atlantic City at the African American Heritage Museum of Southern New Jersey with the founder and president, Mr. Ralph Hunter Sr. This is probably going to be the easiest interview that I do all year because I've known Mr. Hunter for several years, but now I get an opportunity to bring him to my television audience. How are you today, Mr. Hunter?
Outstanding, Raymond. How are you? It's a pleasure to have you guys here at the African American Heritage Museum.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, and thank you for allowing us to actually shoot several of our shows here this afternoon. So no matter where you are in America, most major cities and a lot of minor ones actually have some African American museums in your area, and our goal before the year is out is to hit as many of them as we can. But one of the things that I always notice is that people from my hometown of Atlantic City have not even been to their own African American museum, which is right here in Atlantic City, the African American Heritage Museum of Southern New Jersey. And again, we're here with Ralph Hunter Sr. So why don't you take us back and tell us how you came up with the idea to start a museum? That's a grand idea, and I'm sure it took a while to go from an idea in your head to actually walls and exhibits, and you actually have two museums that you curate, at least, and a traveling exhibit as well, right?
Absolutely. Well, the African American Museum actually got started many, many years ago. I started collecting about 40 years ago. And what had taken place, I had grown up in Philadelphia. And while I was in Philly in elementary school, probably first grade, the teacher used to read a book all the time. And the name of the book she would read was called Little Black Sambo. And so when she would read the book, I'd stick my hands in my ears and never listen to any of the words. So about 40 years ago, I came into a little bit of money. My business was very successful, and I decided to start collecting African-American memorabilia. So I had the opportunity to take a 5-year sabbatical and head south. And I went to North Carolina, was one of my first stops. And I'd gone into a antique shop, and when I arrived, I asked the clerk, did she have anything that was black or African American? She said she had one item, but it was in the back room, and her boss wouldn't permit her to put it out because they didn't want to offend any customers. I says, Miss, I have cash money, and whatever you have, I will buy from you. So she goes into the back room, and she comes out with this book. Now, it's really a funny story. So when she arrived with the book, I look at the book and I have this flashback of being in elementary school and the teacher reading this story all the time. So she said, this is all I have, and it's Little Black Sambo. It's by the author Helen Bannerman. And I said, okay, thank you very much. I will buy it. So I bought the book, and I'm on the way out of the door of the antique store, and I said to myself, I'm going to buy every Little Black Sambo book for the next 5 years and have a big bonfire and burn them all up. But what happened, I took the book out in the car, and I opened it up and I started reading it. It was a fascinating story. The story is about this little black boy whose mother made him a new jacket, new pair of slacks, and some slippers, and he had his father's umbrella. And he asked his mother, could he go out into the jungle and play? And once he got into the jungle, a tiger came up to her and roared at him, said, if you don't give me that beautiful jacket, I'm going to eat you up. What are you going to do with the jacket? So I'm going to put it on my hind legs. When I walk through the jungle, I too will be the most handsome tiger in the jungle. No, along comes another tiger, roars at him once again, says, if you don't give me those beautiful trousers, we're going to do with the trousers. Put on my front two legs. When I walk through the jungle, I too will be the most handsome tiger in the jungle. Along comes the third tiger, roars at him once again and says, if you don't give me those beautiful slippers, what are you going to do with the slippers? I'm going to put them in my ears, and when I walk through the jungle, I too will be the most handsome tiger in the jungle. Now all he has left is his undergarments. And another tiger comes up on him, roars at him once again, says, if you don't give me the umbrella, what are you going to do with the umbrella? I'm going to tie it on my tail. When I walk through the jungle, I'll be the most handsome tiger in the jungle. So now the tigers are all in the jungle, and they're chasing each other around. They decided to take the clothing off, and they start chasing each other around a tree real fast. And we're going to run faster and faster and faster. And they melt it into a mound of butter. Along comes Little Black Sambo's father through the jungle and sees the mound of butter, gathers it together. In the meantime, Little Black Sambo had gathered his clothing and ran back home and told his mother what a terrible day he had had. But the moral of this here story is how the museum got started. From a Little Black Sambo book that I found in an antique store in North Carolina. So Little Black Sambo's mother asked him what he liked to eat. He said he could eat 100 pancakes. So it was really a great story. If you ever have an opportunity to read the story, but read it in a positive way. And from my positive attitude that particular day, spawned this museum. Here at the museum now, we have some 13,000 artifacts and ephemera, and all kinds of statuary, and you name it. We have historical documents here at the museum. Come visit us. We're here in Atlantic City and in Newtonville, New Jersey, and that's how it got started. You never heard that story before, did you?
I never heard that story, and believe it or not, I know quite a few African folk tales, but I heard of Little Black Sambo, but I never heard the story, and that's an amazing story. That's the short version. If you're just tuning in, I'm used to being on the radio. You are watching Voices and Village, and my name is Raymond Tyler, and we're here with the one and only Ralph Hunter, who is the president and founder of the African American Heritage Museum of Southern New Jersey. We're going to have to definitely do many more of these interviews, but what we're going to do right now is take a break because Mr. Hunter is about to show us around the museum and give us an exclusive look at some of his great exhibits right here at the African American Heritage Museum of Southern New Jersey. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Voices in Village. My name is Raymond Tyler. We're here today at the African American Heritage Museum of Southern New Jersey, and we're still here with my good friend Ralph Hunter, who is going to tell us about this great exhibit, which is actually right outside of the museum.
Hello, thank you, Raymond. Well, we're here at the African American Heritage Museum, and what we're looking at right now, the actual nightclubs and the nightlife in Atlantic City. We have the complete history of nightclubs like the Club Harlem, Fitzgerald's, and you can imagine the different entertainers who came here to Atlantic City back in the 20s and 30s to witness this. This is a replica of the sign of the Club Harlem, and those are the doors there. As we walk into the museum here, we're going to first have a piece here we're going to talk about. His name is Jocko. Jocko was a little black boy between the ages of 11 and 14, and his job was to hold the horses when General Washington crossed the Delaware at the Battle of Trenton. And it was so cold that evening, Jocko froze to death in his position, and General Washington had a statue made of his likeness. A legend has it, and put in front of his mansion. And the Quakers and the abolitionists came by there, and they would see it, so they thought it would be a great idea to put it in front of safe houses. So they used it for a safe way to the Underground Railroad. They would light a candle if it was safe, and the candle would be out if it was not safe. Coming in a little further here, we'll see John Lewis. Everyone knows the great role that he played. And if you could just zero in on this picture here, this is after Congressman Lewis came across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and he was beaten so severely you could actually see the bandage in his head. And Lyndon Johnson, of course, passed the Civil Rights Voting Act shortly after that. Here's President Obama presenting the Medal of Freedom to Lewis, and this in the background is the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is John Lewis here in Life magazine coming across that bridge before he was so savagely beaten that particular evening. Coming around over here, you're going to see more works of John Lewis and his contribution to where we are today. Over here we have another exhibit. The exhibit here is called Stereotypes. And what Stereotypes does, it tells you the story of people like Aunt Jemima, Cream of Wheat, Little Black Sambo, and all the other stereotypes that were involve African American people looking in a very, very, very negative way. And there's a video over here that shows that whole story. You can come in and see that. It's almost a life-size wooden carving of Aunt Jemima. As we look over here on this wall here, you can see the different stages of Aunt Jemima in 1902, 1905, 06, and they didn't start to humanize her until 1921. So you have to come in and look at all the ephemera, all of the information we have on Aunt Jemima. As you look over here, you're going to see another person who was part of the stereotypes. His name is Rastus. Rastus, of course, was the face of Cream of Wheat. What happened, a photographer goes into a restaurant, and he sees this handsome black man, and he asked him could he take a picture of him, and he said yes, and he gave him $5. From this date forth, his family's never received another penny from the company that owns Cream of Wheat. So that's a sad story, and that's the story about Rastus. This is part of the Collections Museum of Little Black Sambo. We have almost every edition was ever written, but we can't get them all out. We have so many things we have in our archives.
Can I ask you a question? I'd like to ask you, we live in a culture today where it seems like they want to erase N-word Jim from Mark Twain's writing. They've effectively taken Song of the South from the Disney Channel. How do you personally feel that we should balance some of the stereotypes in our history with trying not to offend people?
Well, I think it's very, very important to let people know the true story of what took place with these African-American faces, how they were treated as secondary citizens, but by the same token, they sold a lot of product and made a great deal of money. I, as a museum, we have to be able to tell the whole story. We have to tell the story about Aunt Jemima and about Little Black Sambo and all the other stories. I think in the setting of a museum, they're fantastic, and we can tell the story to people who don't know the story. So I don't have a problem with having stereotypes here at the museum. I think that's the backbone of the museum, and that's the history should be shared with schools and churches and other organizations around. Come see it.
Okay. Well, thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting your tour. Please continue.
Okay. Over here, and you're going to see Atlantic City at its finest.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. D. So today we're going to be learning about why airplanes fly. And then we're going to be making a rotocopter. Then I'm going to have a challenge for you. Elephants? Why would we be hearing about elephants if we're talking about learning to fly? Well, I guess you're just going to have to hang around and find out. Let's go. The average airplane weighs 550,000 pounds. That's equivalent to 46 elephants or 24 school buses. Wow, now that is heavy. So there are 4 forces that act on an airplane at all times, and these 4 forces determine if the airplane will fly or if it will not. They are lift, weight, thrust, and drag. So let's get up so we can do the 4 forces flight dance with Dr. D. The 4 moves are lift, weight, thrust, drag. Lift, weight, thrust, drag. Now let's learn why airplanes fly. Lift is caused from specially designed wings that are curved over the top. This curvature over the top allows the air, when the airplane is moving through the air, to move faster. This faster moving air on top of the airplane is what causes the airplane to lift. Weight is caused by gravity, pulling the airplane down towards the ground. You've seen this every day. When you have an object, like I have this highlighter, and you let it go, which direction does it go in? Down. It's the same reason we are not floating in the air like people in space. Gravity pushes us down. Now there's drag. You've felt drag. Drag is air that pushes against the body. It pushes against the body, and then it wants to push you backwards. You've seen this and you've experienced this if you've ever ridden a bicycle. And you feel that air against your body, that is drag. And what happens when it's really, really windy and you try to ride your bike in a lot of wind? You have to pedal really hard. And then what happens? You have to crouch down like this so that you have to keep pedaling. Otherwise, it's going to push you backwards. Well, these same things happen with an airplane. So there must be something that has to be stronger than drag and stronger than gravity pulling it down. And that is called thrust. And that's the purpose of the engines. The engines create a thrust of the airplane that's stronger than weight from gravity, and it's stronger than the drag from the air. So that's how airplanes fly. Okay, so Dr. D's out here freezing with our rotocopter. And here we go. Yes, and what forces were not pushing on the rotocopter? It didn't move forward, so there was no thrust. And if you wanted to fall faster, you add more paper clips. Happy sciencing, Dr. D.
And welcome back to Voices in Village. My name is Raymond Tyler. We're still here at the beautiful African American Heritage Museum of Southern New Jersey, based here in Atlantic City. We want to thank our good friend Ralph Hunter Sr. for giving us the space to do today's show. And I'm here with a good friend of mine. I won't say African American history because that'll make you sound old, but you are a person of renown here in the South Jersey area as a scientist. And she is, of course, the mind behind Mad About Science and neighborhood-science.com. We just saw her video, How Do Airplanes Fly? And so what I wanted to ask you is, in that particular video, you make mention of elephants. And so one of the first things that I thought of is there's a presentation in Disney's Dumbo of a song called I Never Seen an Elephant Fly. And that didn't have anything to do with you putting the elephants in your video, did it?
No, not at all. But that is good though. But no, the reason I do it whenever I'm trying to explain science concepts, even when I was a teacher, I try to make it as simplistic for the kids and relate it to their world. And that's one of the best things you can do in education is when you're teaching something, connected back to the student's world. That's how they're going to remember. So when I'm talking about the weight of an airplane, kids aren't going to understand a ton. 500 tons or anything like that. It's abstract to them. So I said, how can I have them understand how heavy an airplane is? So I decided that I was going to connect it to elephants, and I also connected it to school buses because that's something they can relate to. 23 school buses, like that's crazy. 40-something elephants, that's crazy, heavy. So this way they can make a association between weight and their world.
Just do me a favor, when you allude to the elephants, do not point over toward me. I don't appreciate that at all. We're here with Dr. D, and we're talking science. And the next video we're about to see is Center of Gravity. So, I thought that was a great segue to go from how do airplanes fly to go to Center of Gravity. How did you get the idea that you wanted to do a children's science video on Center of Gravity?
Well, whenever I think about science topics that I'm going to have, I always try to think of what game or am I going to make or have the kids do that's something that they can easily replicate. Right, so that it's very easy and simple and inexpensive. So when I thought about Center of Gravity, I always know about those balancing toys I used to like that you can hold on your finger and then the toys would balance. So that all has to do with Center of Gravity. And also my favorite areas of science are physical science and chemical science. So I always pick science topics that stay in that realm, and plus gravity's everywhere, right? So us sitting here now is because of gravity. So it's something that the kids experience, probably don't even pay any mind to. So I'm trying to bring their attention to the fact that science is all around us, and there's science in everything we do and everywhere we go.
Great. One quick question. Was Newton the first scientist to actually make note of the fact that there was gravity? Because as a regular person, I think I might have been, it wasn't until I saw the cartoon with the fig falling on Newton's head that I even considered that there was a force holding us down and keeping us from floating.
Well, as far as I know, yes, but I really haven't researched it past that, so I'm just going to say, yeah, he was under the tree, the apple fell, and yes, the apple. He did say that. Newton's fig Newton.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm going to say perhaps, but I'm not exactly sure.
let's change the subject because I'm sounding way too much like Penny from The Big Bang Theory. All right, so before we get to center of gravity, because we'll probably wrap the show right after we see the video, I want to ask you a serious question, and also thank you for taking time to be with us today. You are so awesome, and I can't wait for my niece Lillian to meet you. And if you have questions for Dr. D, how can people write you to, with their science questions?
They can always reach me at DRD, at neighborhood-science.com.
Now, my other question was, let's talk about legacy and why you do this. I'm always mindful of young journalists and young talk show hosts that will be coming behind me. What do you think your legacy will be from Mad About Science and Neighborhood Science, or what do you want your legacy to be?
One of my biggest, I don't know if I could say my soapbox stance, if you want to say that, is the fact that when we look at the population and see the mixture within the population, it doesn't represent, the STEM fields does not represent the population of which we live. Right? So when you look at the population, it's an eclectic mixture of all races and religions and colors and gender. But when we look at the STEM field, we see very few females, we see very few African Americans, we see very few English language learners. So my plight is to, as the mission of my nonprofit is, to change the face of STEM. So I want to get more kids excited about these fields so that we have more kids entering the STEM fields, because STEM fields can make a difference between poverty and not poverty. So it's the most lucrative field, but we don't have a lot of minorities. So I'm hoping when kids see someone like me who looks like them, and realize that science is not hard, that it is doable and it is all around us, that I can have this lasting impact where I truly change the face of STEM.
And there you have it. And that's why science is not boring. And when you're talking about inspiring kids, although I'm too old to go into the STEM field, I'm one of your biggest kids who you've inspired. And I'm so excited to have Neighborhood Science with Dr. D as part of Voices and Village. Okay, so right now, this is Neighborhood Science with Dr. D, Center of Gravity. That's our show for today. We thank you for watching Voices in Village. Be sure to check out our website, www.voicesinvillage.com, and we'll see you right here again next week.